Hey, what is up, everyone? This is Gary A. Swaby, and you're now watching the Snowfall Aftermath. And today we're going to be recapping the very last episode of Snowfall, and that is Snowfall Season 6, Episode 10. And the title of the episode is The Struggle. And I am joined by Mr. Richard Bailey Jr. Richard, how are you doing?
Doing good, Gary. What's up, listeners and viewers?
What's up, indeed? Yeah, I can't believe we're here, man. This is we saw history today. This is the very last episode of Snowfall, like ever. So
Yes, it is. A very heartbreaking conclusion to the story, but one that made a lot of sense. But yeah,
mm,
I mean, it's definitely an end of a legacy. I hope that more people recognize the show and it gets a lot more awards in the future. But I guess that's to be determined. But yeah, a hell of a way to end the show. So I got to give them props on that.
definitely, yeah. I will give the whole team props on this for what they were able to accomplish. Um, Richard actually sent me some of the interviews from the showrunner and stuff, and they were talking about how hard it was to carry on the show after John Singleton passed away. And I think they did a fantastic job. From seasons through to six.
Hmm.
They were basically without John Singleton, so yeah, I think they did their thing. And this episode and the ending. I mean, there are things we can say about it, but I see a lot of people kind of hating on the ending a little bit, saying they didn't like how it turned out. And I mean, we're gonna get into it, but I feel like they did a good job. You know, considering everything, I think they did a good job. But let's get right into discussing it, so then we can kind of go. We can have a deeper conversation about that. Friendly reminder to the people: hit the like button, please. This is a monumental episode right here. Because this is the final Snowfall recap. So please do hit that like button, and don't forget to leave your comments. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you thought of the ending. You know, Feel free to respond to any of our comments and all that stuff. It's all welcome over here. All the energy is welcome. So please do leave your comments. And also subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon. The Powercast is also coming later, and you can also check out Koalition Entertainment and Koalition Gaming. So with that out of the way, let's get right to our takeaways. And this week it is Richard's turn to go first. So, Richard, please do hit us with your takeaways.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I want to reiterate what I said earlier. I thought this was an excellent finale. I've seen the words poetic, and I agree with those words 100%. Um, a very fitting ending for Franklin's story, and even though it was tragic, I feel like it was well deserved in terms of what happened to him instead of the route that they could have gone with the character. But we will definitely get into that for sure in today's discussion. But I do have about four takeaways. Three of them are pretty brief. And then, of course, I do have the one big one that I'll get to. So I'm going to start with the smaller ones. In this episode, we did get an update on Gustavo. We do see that he basically has a bit of, I guess you could say, a wrestling school slash gym that he has started up. And he does answer the page and gets a message from his girlfriend letting him know that the kids are all right, that she's all right, and that they're currently in North Carolina and they want to see him. So, I mean, I know last week we saw Oso, aka Gustavo's final goodbye with Franklin, and I'm glad to see that he had a happy ending. Now, obviously, if there is a Snowfall spinoff, which we know that there is one that is being developed, uh, well, I would like to see him return, but I don't know to what extent we're going to see because, again, he's going to North Carolina. We do know that Wanda is basically going to pursue a career in rap. So I don't know how they're going to make those parallels. But even if he doesn't come back, I'm just glad to see that somebody had a happy ending. Even though this guy also not a good guy because of things that he's done throughout the entirety of the show, killing people, so on and so forth. But he really felt like he was under a lot of pressure this season between the DEA and the KGB. So you're glad to see at least somebody has somewhat of a happy ending. So I thought that was good to point that out. So I give them props on that. My next takeaway is about Louie, who we don't see for a majority of the episode. And then about 2 years after everything has happened, we see that she's still on the run. She's at a farm slash ranch, and the DEA are still very much looking for her. Now, there are people that basically, when she came to this farm and ranch, she did come there under a different identity. She was working there, and they pretty much protected her because they didn't give any information to the DEA. Now, I will say this that as we spoke about on this show before, Gary, I knew that that DEA agent wasn't dead. You know, obviously Ruben got into that little car accident with them, but clearly this guy wasn't dead, and he's still on a mission. So makes you wonder what's going to happen with Louie. Obviously, she's on the run, and she's probably going to be on the run for the rest of her life. So I don't know if we'll see the character again in a spinoff, but again, it made sense in the context. But it felt like everybody had a fall from grace, including Louie. And hers started when Jerome got killed earlier this season, and then it didn't let up from there. So we'll see what happens, but not a good ending for her as expected. The third takeaway is really about Leon and Wanda in this episode. Um, Now, what I do like about the episode is that as they continue to show the downward spiral of Franklin, it had you wondering as a viewer what's going to happen, because Franklin had a scene with Leon earlier in the episode where he's asking him for money, and it looks as though he was going to threaten to do something to Leon, which again shows you how desperate he was to try to get that money. And then obviously, you know, Wanda does have a conversation with Leon after that and tells Leon that she's going back to Ghana. She reached her breaking point. She wants to go back to Ghana. At that point, Leon is still in his mind thinking he wants to stay behind, and he gives her money. Now, this is what I will say. You know, I don't really understand why he would still want to stay there. You know, they no longer have a plug. He still feels a responsibility to take care of the community that Franklin destroyed. But really, that's not on him. And it's not one person's job to fix all this stuff. So, in my opinion, he should have gone back to Ghana a lot sooner. Obviously, he didn't feel that need until he spoke to Sissy. And again, that was to show the bond between him and Sissy and how it has grown over the years. And by the way, I want to say right now, the cinematography in this episode, this was absolutely fantastic. It's like you're watching a film. They had one shot in particular when Sissy was talking to Leon, and you could see the reflection of each other on the glass. That was just a beautiful shot, the entire episode. And of course, when they show Franklin as he's drinking, so on and so forth, just the way that they shot the episode, this is a masterclass in how you shoot something. So I really hope this show is going to get recognized for all of this stuff. You know, obviously, the directors, producers, everybody, they're going to go on to do other things, but I hope people remember this work because they really did a phenomenal job. And again, John Singleton was not in the picture, so I think he would be proud of the work they put into this. But hopefully it gets the recognition. I want to see it get a whole bunch of awards, nominations when that time comes, but we'll see if that actually happens. But yeah, so Leon does eventually decide to go back to Ghana, and we do see some time passes and he comes back and sees Franklin at the end of the episode. It's the exact same location when they started this show, where you see the street and the trees in which they have their conversation. So it was a really nice callback to show you how everything came full circle with the characters. And of course, Leon is supporting Wanda in her new passion for music. I do want to make a mention, though, like Gary mentioned earlier, I did send him some interviews. In the interview that the showrunner had with Men's Health, he did say that news about the spinoff got leaked ahead of schedule, and it's actually not greenlit yet by FX. Now, who knows if maybe he's just saying that because he doesn't want more information to come out, or maybe it actually isn't greenlit. But at this point, it's not a guarantee that that show is going to happen. I kind of feel like people love Leon and Wanda as characters, so it can happen. But we have to wait and see what the future holds. Obviously, it really depends on how well this finale does. And I saw it trending all last night, so I'm pretty confident it's going to get a lot of attention for that reason. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, I was happy with the way Leon's story ended again. He had a happy ending, even though Leon has done some bad things. He went through a journey, tried to be remorseful, tried to rebuild the community. So it makes me curious to see what happens with him. Should they decide to spin up? Should they decide to do the spinoff in the future? What happens to him from here on out? And finally, let's get to the final big takeaway from this episode. We need to talk about the performance of Damson Idris as Franklin Saint. This guy needs to get a whole bunch of awards and nominations. And I mean, it was a complete downward spiral. And the irony of it is that, you know, if you watch this show, you know that Franklin has never done drugs, and he has never drank alcohol. It wasn't until this episode when he took that drink of alcohol, then you start to see him regress. And this is pretty much a parallel to Alton, because Alton was poor, an alcoholic. That's how we got introduced to the character from season 1. So the father and the son became one. And it was very tragic to see all this happening. Obviously, there were a lot of things that happened. Now, the episode did start where he pretty much he called Veronique to tell her what happened, that Sissy had killed Teddy. And then the CIA, he talks to them, and they're telling him the deal is still on, but he needs to give them Ruben now. So he drops off Ruben. The CIA take Ruben. We don't see Ruben anymore. So we assume that they dealt with Ruben in their own way. But pretty much, he does ask Leon for money, as I mentioned earlier. Leon doesn't give him money because he wants to honor Sissy's wishes in the sacrifice that she made to give up her life just to make sure that she could protect his. Okay, so her life and her freedom. So pretty much from there, we do see they have this whole thing with the property still. And the fact that they do bring back the character that I believe his name was Mr. Walker, the character that we spoke about in the past. I didn't expect that actor to return, so I was pretty surprised to see him return. But the fact that Veronique was the one talking to him, basically trying to sell their shares without consulting with Franklin, that obviously made him angry. And I find it very interesting how Franklin decided, well, I'm going to sell to my mom's former employer. So once again, a call back to season 1, because we know how her boss was prior, very racist, but definitely had access to a lot of money and wanted the property. So that came full circle. And then, of course, though, the way that the interaction went between Veronique and Franklin, you know, the fact that he put his hands on her, and we spoke about this last week. We said Veronique is probably going to leave Franklin. He was going to lose her in this episode, and that's exactly what happened. So I want to take a moment to give a shout out to Inga71, because she's been saying since day one she doesn't like the character. And you see why. And it happened in this episode where she took all the money, cleaned out all the money that was in the account, and left Franklin high and dry. Now, I do have a critique that we'll get into later about Veronique, something that I feel. But in my opinion, everything happened as it needed to happen. We needed to see Franklin have this downward spiral. One thing I do want to clarify, though, because I feel like I saw a lot of people responding to this season finale saying that, so with Franklin, it was all about money. No, it was never about money. Sure, money was an extension of what he was after, but it was really about pride. And, you know, if you watch the entire episode and then you listen to the final song played by Kendrick Lamar, Pride, the words in that song talks about pretty much, you know, that somebody killing himself because of their pride. So even though Franklin didn't physically die in terms of getting killed, he did die as far as what we knew about Franklin on the positive side. He had such a bright future ahead of him, but he was very arrogant in how he conducted himself business-wise. And he felt that he didn't want help from anybody because he figured it was his way or the highway. He wanted to go out on his terms. He didn't want anybody to own him. He wanted his own freedom. So that delusional way of thinking is why the character ended down the path that he did. And I personally feel that there are a lot of families out there. They've had relatives that have gone through this, whether they're addicted to alcohol or drugs. You see someone that has such a promising future, it just throw it all away because of these vices. So this is why I felt a personal connection to it, because I know people in my family that have gone down this path. Some of them did not make it either. So that's why I say I kind of feel like anybody that watches this show and they've had people like this in their families or friends, they're going to have an instant connection to that, because that's some very deep stuff. And that's what we saw with Franklin. So, of course, we also saw the return of Peaches. I know people have been asking for Peaches. And of course, you saw how that ended. Franklin ended up killing Peaches. He tried to get access to the safe. He gets access to the safe to see that most of the $5 million is gone. I believe it was only $1,200 or $12,000 left in that account. And then we saw how that all turned out. But pretty much the downward spiral of Franklin Saint, this entire episode, it really was heartbreaking to see, but it is a realistic portrayal to show you the irony of somebody that spent all this time destroying the community with what they were doing, and now they are relegated to stay in that community forever. Obviously, he doesn't have a house anymore, so he'll be on the streets. But it's a very sad, very heartbreaking way to end the story, but it made sense in the context of the character, because I said on this show last week, if Franklin is going to go out, I want him to go out on his own terms. And that's exactly what happened in the finale. So I was satisfied with that. And the last point that I will mention, obviously you see my name, Boys in the Hood crew member. I love the fact that they had that call back to Boys in the Hood in the episode. A very nice Easter egg to pay tribute to John Singleton, to remind people this was initially his vision. Obviously, he unfortunately did not get to stay around to see it to the very end, but I'm 100% sure that he will be proud of the work that they put into this. And again, even if somebody can criticize some writing stuff, sure, you can criticize that all you want, but you can't take away anything from all the men and women that acted their ass off on this show. The performances, the cinematography on the show, the way everything is shot, and the realistic approach to storytelling, not some fantasy stuff like other shows we have actually covered. All of this is why this show is in a class of its own. So if you haven't watched Snowfall, I will highly recommend you watch the show and pay attention to everything that's happening in the show. And when you watch the show and pay attention to these details, I think you'll appreciate it a lot more than other stuff that's out here today. But that's pretty much all I have to say. I thought it was an excellent finale. And I don't know what the future holds if they do, but I absolutely can't wait to see all these talented actors and actresses, producers, directors in the showrunner. I can't wait to see what they do next, because I know whatever they do next is going to be just as awesome. So that's it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, Excellent takeaways as always. Great observations, and yeah, I agree, man. Like phenomenal, phenomenal. Everything from the camera work to the acting, you know, all of it was great stuff. Music selection, the credits,
Mm-hmm.
it's all great, all very well done. So yeah, great takeaways. I'll go ahead and get into my takeaways now, and then we can have a little discussion after that, because there are some things to discuss, even though we're not trying to predict what's happening next. But there are some things that there are some there's a few little loose ends that this episode provided. So we'll get into that in a sec. But I'm gonna go ahead and give my takeaways first. So first of all, one thing that I noticed about this episode and that I really enjoyed was just the fact that Sissy was not even talking to Franklin at all. Like I don't think she said a word. She didn't say a word to him, the whole episode, because and that was powerful for two reasons. Like number one, she knew he was too far gone. She knew she lost her son already, and she knew he likely wasn't going to change, and just the fact, like, just the way that whenever Franklin was kind of talking to her, he failed to even like acknowledge or understand what she did. It's like he's just always concerned about the money. Like that's the number one thing. So like, he'll go and visit her and he'll be like, "Oh, they're trying to help you. They're trying to get you out of here. You need to close your mouth and stop talking about the CIA." And then he's like, "Why'd you do it? Like, why'd you do it right before he was about to give up the password and I was about to get my money? Like, why do you have to do that? Can you wait 10 seconds?" Like, he just goes right into talking about the money. And it's like she's just sitting there silently knowing that, just disappointed, I guess, that she knows that she's lost her son. Like he's just too far gone, and that's why she had to do what she did. Like because it's the only way to save him. But even then, he's not really saved, and it's like just the fact that he can't even acknowledge or understand what she did for him. Like that's just that's the worst. That's probably like the worst part of the pain for her. Like just the fact that he doesn't even understand himself. So yeah, that was powerful. Like, just she didn't talk to him at all, but she only talked to Leon. And then the type of conversation she had with Leon, telling him she's proud of him and asking him to kind of leave and be with his wife in Ghana and that sort of stuff. Like that was powerful too. It's like this is what she wanted her son to be. This is what she wanted for Franklin. It kind of feels like so. It's like in a way that is her son, and she had the conversation that you would think she would have with her son. She had it with Leon. So that's just that's the irony in all this. It's like Leon is kind of coming out of this as the main character, almost like just the way even how it ended, it's like he's really coming out of this show as like the main guy, after all of that happened. So go ahead. What was
And I
you
just
gonna
want to
say
make a
something?
comment that
Yeah.
is an excellent observation. And I just want to say I like the parallel how Franklin, when this show started, he was the level-headed one, and Leon was the wild one. They have actually switched places now, which is
Yeah.
that's it's crazy to see that happen. But I just want to make that comment.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's another thing. It's like everything was so well thought out in terms of the parallels from season one to now. It's like I definitely am gonna go back and watch the whole thing through again from season one to season six because like there's just so much detail that they've put into this whole season in terms of how far the characters have come. So I'm absolutely going back just to see how they put it all together because there's so many like little things that they just call back to all the time. So yeah, but yeah, excellent observation there. Like they completely switched, did a 180. Franklin was you know, he was a very different man in season one, and now he let the money, the success, and everything get to his head, and he's just too far gone. But yeah, those scenes with Sissy were very powerful to watch. And it's like each time he saw her, he was like at a new point of like breaking down. Like his life was at a new stage of like breaking down, and then the last scene he has with her, he just completely flips out at her, you know. So, and that in typical Franklin fashion. So yeah, it's that was powerful. Um, and then yeah, Leon, the real son, kind of touched on that. So Franklin, like you said, I don't know if I can even say it better than you said it, but just Franklin's whole path of destruction in this episode, where he kind of came full circle and became his father, because that like the very first image we have of Alton is I think it's when Franklin is actually in his car and he's driving around the area and he sees his father stumbling to the store to get to buy a drink or whatever, and he's clearly drunk and stuff. And I remember back then Franklin, he didn't respect his father at all back then. He was very disappointed in him. Um, and I remember, after he actually saw him, he didn't even acknowledge him when he saw him. Like he didn't try to call out to him or anything. That first time he went home and he spoke to his mother about it. And he was just like, "Oh, I saw him today," you know. And yeah, I remember that part very vividly. So Franklin was always kind of, he kind of had this love hate relationship with Alton. Of course, he at first it was like he hated him, and then he came to kind of tolerate him and like him a little bit as the show went on, and as Alton cleaned himself up and stuff. But yeah, Alton was an alcoholic, and this episode here, the finale was um, Franklin's descent into becoming an alcoholic and a bum, just like his father was, and it was perfectly set up from the very first few scenes that we see, where the aftermath of what Sissy did, and he goes to the payphone. He talks to Veronique about what happened, and then he happens to be at a bar, so he sits down to kind of process things, and then he has a drink, and like you said, Rich, this character doesn't drink and drug, like, he that's something he doesn't do, and he stood on it pretty firmly. But now he chooses to have a drink because he just missed out on $30 million, and he's trying to process things, and then we see that look in his eye when he actually has the drink, and then everything changes from there. And that's one thing where the cinematography was excellent throughout this whole episode, because you see, like, there's these shots where it looks like they make it look like it's a deranged alcoholic character just by the shot alone, like, just the different kind of shots we see of him when he's in the car and stuff, and just the angles that the camera's at, like, they just make him look crazy, like, the whole the whole episode, like. And it's just very well done, because you don't actually always see him drinking the alcohol. You do see it sometimes where he's drinking the bottle, but you don't see it all the time. But you can tell that there's something not quite right with him, and he's not like normal. So they just did an excellent job with showing you, how much he was going down that path. Um, and there was some great scenes. Just following his path was very entertaining, like, because you had the whole Veronique thing. So he's trying to get money, and he's trying to keep the Spring Street property for as long as he can or whatever. But obviously, he needs to raise a significant amount of money. He first goes to Leon, and Leon basically tells him, do you understand what Sissy did for you? And he basically tells him no, he's not going to lend him the money. Now, some people do debate whether he should have given him just a little bit to get back on his feet. He could have gave him like 1 million or something. But the thing is, Leon understands. Like, that's the thing. He understands why Sissy did what she did, and she understands that. I mean, he understands that giving him that money wouldn't fix the problem. Like, it would only make it worse. Like, if you let Franklin bounce back and get back on his feet and start to do what he does again, is he's gonna destroy himself in another way. He's gonna end up dead, probably. So he understood that, and that's why he didn't give him the money. And then the whole thing with Veronique, where I think he sold off like the other properties his mother had or something, like the houses, the apartments and stuff, and he used that money to fund Spring Street. And Veronique wasn't too happy with that move, and she was trying to sell Spring Street to that dude. I forgot his name. I think I wrote it down somewhere. But what was the dude's name? Paul Davis. There we go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Davis.
Yeah. So yeah, and he wasn't happy that she went behind his back to make that deal with Paul Davis. So he kind of snapped on her. He grabbed her, and we've seen him kind of threaten her before. He's threatened her. He's told her, look, don't cross me, don't mess with me. He's put his foot down before, but this time, Veronique doesn't go for it. She says, "Get off me." She says, "F off me." And right there is when I knew that was it. when when she said that, I was like, okay, yeah, it's over. It's over now. Because we're basically seeing everyone lose their respect for Franklin too, at the same time. Like everybody's losing respect to him. Like Leon, Sissy, like everyone. Like they're just seeing him and how desperate he is for money, and like the fact that he just won't let it go. Everyone's losing that respect for him now. Um, and Veronique had been lost it looks like, by that point. And yeah, that was the last straw for her. She pulls her move. She makes her move and like makes a big withdrawal of the money. And when Franklin goes to the bank or wherever it was to do whatever he planned to do, the money's gone. And yeah, that was a great scene as well. Just his reaction and seeing the realization of what happened and everything. So yeah, there was that. And then what was great as well, from like going from to like the next kind of phase, is when the dude, I forgot the dude's name, but it was the same dude that he was trying to look into Peaches, right? And then
Top,
he had her top, yeah, top. What was it? Say again.
it's a top notch.
Top, top notch. Yeah, there we
Yeah.
go. Yeah, so top notch. Um, I guess he has top notch looking for Veronique, and he can't really find her. And top notch tells him, look, I'm not gonna, after this, I'm not looking for anyone anymore. I'm not doing anything for you. And that was little. It was a small thing, but that kind of shows also how much of a decline Franklin is on, because even this dude doesn't want to mess with him anymore. So it's like, that it's getting real tough for Franklin, like when everybody's just kind of distancing themselves and just letting him fall off and stuff. Like, so yeah, even he's like trying to get away from Franklin, but he does give him an envelope. And finally we find out what happened to Peaches. And Peaches is now a fiend. He's laying up in the house getting high and everything, and he has a safe actually. So of course, Peaches ends up dead. Like, Franklin's trying to get him to open the safe, but he has a gun and he reaches. I thought Franklin was hit for a sec. I thought he got him, but Franklin was quick with the gun and hit him with the boom boom, and then yeah. So that was it for Peaches. But it was a nice callback to see that, because that's something we've been wondering. That was one of the many loose ends from seasons ago. So I'm glad that we got some sort of payoff with Peaches. So Peaches stole like 5 million from Franklin from the stash house. And Franklin finds the safe in the house, and he's happy because surely the money's in the safe, and he does everything to find the code to break into it. He looks around the whole house, looks in Peach's pockets and everything, trying to find the code to open the safe. And then he has the brilliant idea of trying to get a handyman to come and cut into the safe for him. So he has to move the body and all that stuff, and then and then yeah, the handyman comes. I'm surprised he didn't smell anything. Like, I thought he would walk in the house and think, "Yo, it smells funky in here." Like, because even if the body wasn't there long enough to smell, maybe, but like I feel like just the way the house looked, I still smell. Like, I think it would smell foul in there still. Just even if Peaches was still alive, it probably smells foul. So I'm surprised that he didn't have any kind of reaction. He did kind of ask him, "Oh, do you live here alone?" Because he saw all the mess. But yeah, that was funny. So then he has the repair guy try and crack into the safe and everything, and then the fiend comes looking for Peaches, and then Franklin has to deal with him. And then the handyman, he's kind of like at shock. He's shocked at this point. And yeah, like Franklin forces him to open the safe. He tells him, "I don't want to kill you, but just open the safe." They open the safe, and of course, like we all knew there was either going to be no money in there or like just a little bit of money, and it turned out to be a little bit of money. And I really thought, see this part here, I really thought Franklin was gonna let him go. Like I thought he was just gonna be like, man, just go. Like I didn't think he would give him the money though. Like if I was him, I would have took I would have just said, look, give me the 12K and get out of here. You know, you can have like, you know, you can maybe have like $200 or something, you know, or something like that. But yeah, he just said take the money, and then he shot him in the back. And that was a very cold thing to do because you know dude had kids. If he's assuming he's telling the truth, because he might not be telling the truth, but he said he has
Yeah.
kids and all that stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I agree. It was cold blooded, and actually, the name because he told him his name. That name was
Miguel.
trending on. Yeah, yeah, Miguel. That name
Yeah.
was trending on Twitter last night. So people, that's how I know people were watching the show because they were like, I saw a whole bunch of memes. People like, oh, sorry for Miguel and stuff like that. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
that
I
guy
thought
was a
like
goner
that.
though.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the coldest moments because you know this is just a working man. You know, he's not in the life or anything. You know, and he just decides to kill him just because he saw too much. So at that point, I was thinking Franklin's gonna die because it's like I just felt like fate would get him like after that. Like you know you've sunk, you know, to rock bottom, and you're killing people now. You know, you're killing innocent people just because you can't get your money. Like you've gone way too far now. So I thought that was it for him. You know, but what actually ends up happening is, you know, a lot of time passes and we see that you know, the house, Sissy's house, has eviction notices and everything, and Leon comes knocking, and Franklin he comes, you know, he comes through the house, opens the door, and we see that he's living a harsh life now. Like you know, he's completely fallen off. He's a slave for the bowl now. You know, um, and yeah, so we see his complete fall off, his you know um his drunkard state that he's in, you know, and living like a homeless person, even though he has a house and everything, and not really looking after himself and stuff like that. And then they go for a walk through the alley, and Franklin kind of explains things to Leon. And I found it interesting that he was saying like, you know, the CIA, they were watching him, they were watching the house. He you know, he used to see people in cars and things like that. And then one day he just called them and told them to stop messing with him, and that was it. You know, I don't know if that was just his paranoia. I do believe they probably were watching. They probably did watch him to see what happened to him. Especially if they know where the house is. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if they were watching, but some of those times he was probably paranoid though. I don't know. But yeah, that was interesting that the CIA kind of backed off the whole thing, you know, and just kind of let it go. I guess because they got Sissy, so you know that's the price that they pay with Sissy. They got Ruben as well, you know, who's that's like that's a big prize for them to get like a KGB guy and stuff. So you know, so yeah, and that's the cost of Franklin's freedom. And obviously, you know, this is not the kind of outcome that's celebrated in our community and stuff. Like you see that the kids outside were clowning him, you know, for the way he's living and stuff. And he even had to ask Leon for $20 to go buy him a bowl and stuff. Well, he asked him for $10, and Leon gave him 20. You know, and yeah, and as you pointed out, Rich, you know, that was the very same store that he used to work at that he went in there and bought the bottle from, you know. So that's another parallel, another callback right there, you know, just the where it all started right there, where he was having dreams of something bigger, you know, in that when working at that very store. And now years later, he's going in there and buying alcohol, as an alcoholic with nothing else in his life. So yeah, it came full circle. Franklin went out as an alcoholic. He says that line where I'm free. I'm free now because he's free of everything. Like he doesn't have to worry about the CIA. He doesn't have to worry about the drugs and keeping the money coming and all that stuff and Spring Street. He doesn't have to worry about any of that. He is free now. A lot of people might say that that's not really free. You're a slave to the bottle, to the alcohol and stuff like that. And yeah, of course it is a terrible thing to be that addicted to the alcohol that you can't you don't even take care of yourself. You don't nurture yourself. You don't nourish yourself properly. And you don't focus your time and energy on something productive. That is a terrible fate. And this was a smart guy. He could have did other things outside of that. And that would have been interesting to see him actually do something else and maybe get a square job or something like that. But that's not the type of person Franklin became. I don't think, like you said, Rich, it was about the pride. And I don't think Franklin's pride would let him, work for someone. I don't think he could ever work for anyone again because, like you said, he wanted everything his way on his terms. So I don't think that he would excel, doing anything else like a job or something like that. Maybe if he started his own business or his own hustle or grind, he could have did that, been an entrepreneur. But yeah, this is the tragic part of his story, and it's the cost that he pays for everything he's done. Like, we see him stripped of everything that made him who he was, and gave him his ego. Like he was stripped of all of it. And this is the price Sissy paid, because she wanted him to be free. She wanted to protect him, and this is the outcome. So a lot of people were saying that they don't like the ending and how Franklin went out. The only other choices I see for him to end up would be either for him to be locked up, which I feel like that's kind of played out. That would be a bit boring to see, just him in prison, like as the ending. Or he would be dead. And depending how they did it, that could have been very poetic, him getting a death. But I feel like this was the perfect way, to end Franklin's story because it just says a lot. It says a lot about who he became and where he ended up. So I feel like
Yeah.
they did a great job. What was you gonna say?
I was going to say I agree because we know how much of a disconnect he had with Alton, and they did get close in some of the later seasons until they had the falling out again when Alton started talking about Teddy and spreading the word about the CIA. So it really was the perfect ending because they had such a complicated relationship for it to end this way, where he becomes his father and he goes down the exact same path that Alton went down, and the cycle continues. So I understand people are angry about the ending, but I think they did a fantastic job because it made sense to me. I know, yeah, like you said, we've already seen Franklin get arrested in the show, so I did not want to see that happen again. And if he got killed, yeah, they could have did that, but I think that's kind of expected. So to go down this path, I think it made perfect sense. But we'll see.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And just like you said, like just the fact that they can tie it to Alton, the whole thing with Alton, that just made it more poetic. It made it more fitting for Franklin. And I am happy as well that he told Leon that he's proud of him. Um, because we've seen throughout these past few seasons where he kind of undermines Leon. He talks to him crazy. He treats him poorly and stuff. Despite how far they've come as friends and the fact that Leon always supported him. You know, so just to see him finally acknowledge how far that Leon has come and that he's on the good path and everything, I liked that. Like that was good to see. Um, it was good to see him say that because he could have been angry and bitter still, at Leon. But you know,
Yeah,
what you
no,
gonna say?
I agree. I just want to say, man,
Mm,
that was those were some very emotional conversations. You could
mm,
see, and this is again where I talk about the acting. Damson Idris with the tears in his eyes, saying he's proud of him, and then you see Leon still wanting to help him, but he is too far gone. And then even at the end, when he calls him out, he doesn't bother to turn around, just keeps walking. So
mm.
it really was a very sad, tragic way for the character to go out without actually getting killed. And this felt like it was a far worse fate for him than if he did get killed, because it probably would have been too easy to just kill him and then that's it. So now he has to suffer in the same community that he destroyed all
Yeah,
this time. So that made sense to me.
definitely. Because he was once king of that jungle. He was the king there. Now he's a peasant. He's a nobody. Like he's someone the kids make fun of. So
Yeah,
it was a very fitting outcome. And to quote one of our friends, this isn't a direct quote, but like one of our friends on Twitter, Broken Gamer HD, he said something along the lines of people are too conditioned to see, the the hero or the lead character have a great ending or go out in a blaze of glory, at the end of the story. But sometimes it doesn't always end up like that because this, Snowfall is a very tragic story. Like you have to think about the effect all of these drugs had. Like it is fun to see the rags to riches story and see, somebody come up from nothing. Seeing that is always glamorous to us. It's always entertaining. It's always great to see. Like we love those stories of people coming from nothing and becoming kings, becoming rich, and wealthy. But we have to acknowledge what it takes for that to happen and what it took for Franklin in this story to become that successful was the destruction of the community by those drugs that they sold, and that's what Sissy's whole thing was about. That's what she was trying to say. The CIA are the ones that put all of that in the community, um so with that being said, you have to show the other side. You have to show what path this leads you down towards. You don't always get to go out in a blaze of glory and be seen as a legend. And you don't always get to be rich again, or if after losing your millions. And you don't always get to basically just get a life sentence and you're just in the prison and the streets remember you and immortalize you. Not everyone gets that outcome. Sometimes you just fall off. You just become an everyday person. Or you become the waste of society. um and he did, like, a lot of people were saying he became a junkie, but it was alcohol. But you can make the parallel that he's just like those drug fiends that he created a little bit. He's sharing the same fate as them. So that is the irony in it, and I think that's the beauty in this ending as well.
I
Um,
agree.
so I think it's the perfect ending for Franklin's sake.
I agree. I agree 100%. Um, yeah, it's just like I said, it's a very heartbreaking conclusion, but it made sense and it had to go in this direction. I mean, we've seen obviously as a fan of the show, you see Franklin wanting to get his revenge on Teddy, killing people left and right, and you have to admit it is exciting, right? Because this guy is doing horrible things, but you like him as a character. You kind of understand his motivation of wanting to get his money. But at the end of the day, we cannot overlook the fact of all the bad things that he did to get to this point. And there had to be a payoff for all of that. So it made sense for it to end this way. I think it would have been far too easy to just kill the character and then leave it at that. So I'm glad they took this route because to me it made sense. And making the connection to Alton, that was the icing on the cake. Because just like Alton, Now he will never have a relationship with his child, or will he? But see, at least with Alton's situation, he was still in Los Angeles. Veronique is raising this kid somewhere in Europe. So that right there tells you there's kind of going to be close to no chance that he will ever get to know his child. So that's a far worse fate, I would say. But it made sense to me, 100%.
Yeah, definitely. And we can assume that, eventually Franklin dies this way as well,
Yep.
because if you carry on down that path of just, drinking and not really looking after yourself, it's inevitable, so we can assume that, he passed away like that. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's the sad reality of the situation. But those are my takeaways. Sorry for taking so long, but it's definitely just wanted to get everything out. Since this is the last episode, I'm still even kind of processing the episode, as I talk. So yeah, you know, took a while, but that those are my takeaways. And we are gonna get right into our discussion segment now. Um, because yeah, there's a few things that we definitely have to talk about. So there are loose ends, of course, after this. Where do I even start, So I guess the biggest thing to kind of talk about in terms of loose ends is Louie, because we got one scene of her where the DEA is like searching for her, and she was like, staying at what is that? Is that like a farm or something?
Yeah,
It was
like a
like a
farm
farm.
slash ranch area.
Yeah,
Yeah.
ranch. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, she was in the barn or wherever it was, like listening and stuff, and obviously fearful that she was going to get discovered and stuff. So she's been, she's on the run still from the DEA, and they're still tracking her down. And I thought, I know they're limited on time, but I thought there would be more of a conclusion to her story. I thought we would like get to see more of what actually happened to her after the Buckley situation. And speaking of Buckley, that's another thing we didn't see what happened with him. So what's your thoughts on Louis, and you know, you can talk about what the scene that we did see of her and what you think happened, with her in terms of the story and everything.
Well, one thing I will say about Louis is you're correct. We also did not really see her have too many interactions with her cousin that she helped set up in the earlier season as well. Yes, she did go to her when she needed comforting after what happened to Jerome. So we did at least see them interact in that episode, but we didn't really see her rely on them more so after that. And that was something that I would have been curious to know if she ever tried to go see them, because I think there was some people thinking that she could have just went off and saw them when all this happened, because I mean they weren't nowhere near Los Angeles. But obviously that's not what happened. So I understand that there's going to be criticism about that. I do think we could have gotten a little bit more on Louis, but I also feel that a lot of people, by the end of this show, they were disgusted in Louis. They were disgusted in the fact that she, like Franklin, did not want to take accountability for her role in getting Jerome killed. So for that reason, um, I guess they just wanted to say that she just kept going on the run, and that's what I assume it will continue to happen for her for the rest of her life. She will be on the run. What I find interesting though is again how she felt that she had so much power, and then when it gets to that episode where she has that heart to heart conversation with Jerome before he dies, she says, you have always been the one who people look at as the person in a position of power. Whenever they want to do business deals with you, they don't want to have nothing to do with me. So even though she was getting more money, she had this lavish lifestyle, she never was satisfied because she didn't have the power. Whereas Franklin thought he had all the power, and then he wasn't getting his money, and then all this stuff happened. So it is a bit of a parallel with those two characters. But I do agree we probably could have got a little bit more on her story, but I guess they just wanted to say she just stayed on the run. And as for Buckley, the actor that plays Buckley, he actually put out a tweet, I believe it was yesterday, thanking everybody for being a part of the show, what it's done for his career. So when he sent out that tweet, this was before the episode aired. I assumed we wasn't going to see that character again, and we didn't see him again. So I guess we can assume that he remained a junkie until the very end. Now, I do think that they could have essentially had a scene where when at the very end when Franklin and when Franklin and Leon went to that store, you saw him out on the corner as a crackhead. They could have definitely did that. I feel like they could have showed that to show you really how full circle it has come. But we just assume he got stranded and he stayed there, and that's all that happened. So I kind of wish we did see that. Although I will say, from a creative standpoint, what I would have liked to have seen for his story to end is that he is a crackhead. He happens to be at a crack house, and the police bust into that house and arrest people. Since he was the one that was going to all these houses, breaking up stuff and arresting people, that probably would have been a better way for him to go out because he was a part of the force. So for that to turn on him in that way, that probably would have been a better way to take him out. But outside of that, he was a secondary character, so I guess they said we don't have time to focus on him. Let's just focus on Franklin and all the other characters. But I do agree 100% with Louie. We probably could have got a little bit more of an explanation, but I guess they just said no. Let's just say she's going to stay on the run, and we'll leave it at that. But yeah, I can agree that's a loose end they probably could have did better with for sure.
Yeah, I think Buckley is sharing a cardboard box with Franklin right now. I think that's what's happening.
Yeah.
No, but with yeah, with Louis, we definitely could have got a better, more closure, I think. But I guess in a way, it does work because it kind of shows that she is continuously on the run, and it shows how her life has been affected by her decisions because now she can't have a stable life anymore, and
Hmm.
she's presumably to sustain herself she's going to have to take like real low quality work to kind of sustain
Yes.
herself from now on, so yeah.
And and let me just add, I like how you said that she can't have a stable life because she used to have a stable with horses. So I will say that I like how they made that parallel to say because she loved the horses that she ended up at a place like that. That actually was smart to do that. I just feel like they could have expanded upon more as to what happened to her after that. But I guess they just said no, she's just going to be on the run forever now. So it is what it is.
Yeah, and there are people like that, in the world who kind of get away from, like, they stay on the run from the law, and eventually the law stop they the police stop dedicating resources to finding them, and then they just live undercover, like live underground. Maybe they change their name and they're just doing off the books kind of jobs where their income isn't tracked and stuff. So there are
Mhm.
people like that. So she's just going to be one of those people, I guess, unless she gets caught. And I do wonder if there ever is a spin-off. I wonder if her story will be included in that. That might be
Mm.
interesting to see. Um, but yeah, Louis was a loose end. I want to hear some theories from the people and see what they think, of Louis. Um, so we don't have to spend too long on this because we can assume that bad things happened here. But Ruben, we didn't get to see what the CIA did to him. Now, I based on
So
what I've heard, about, like, I've seen some documentaries on the CIA, and they do torture people, and they do all types of things like that. So maybe that was Ruben's fate. But do you have any thoughts about Ruben in this episode, or what you think might have happened?
that's a good point. I have no idea what happened to Ruben. I know they just wanted to get him since he was trying to blow up their entire investigation. I would assume that they did punish and torture him as well. I don't know if they eventually killed him because it felt like, yeah, like Teddy said before when he was telling Gustavo about this guy. Oh yeah, he just operates independently. But the thing is that he did have a boss, Ruben did have a boss, because we saw the boss in the season. So I don't know how they handled that, but I do agree that was something that they could have expanded upon as well. I guess again, they wanted to really focus on Franklin in this episode, and really, because I think the question we had after we saw last week's episode is, well, Teddy is gone, so you got one episode left of Snowfall, so what all else is it left for Franklin to do? And we got our answer, obviously, but Ruben was not a part of that answer, because that was resolved within the first 3 minutes of the show. Like before they went to their first commercial break, he was gone.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I guess it wasn't important. I don't know what the CIA did, but it would have been nice to know if the showrunner answered that particular question in the interview, but no one asked him that question. So I guess we can just assume he's gone. He's out the picture. But
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah. So I did watch. So shouts to Jake Tran, because I don't know if anyone's heard of him. He's a big YouTuber. He does documentaries and stuff. So I've watched one of his documentaries on CIA, and like they have all these like torture camps and stuff. They used to like they tortured a lot of people after like 9/11 and stuff, basically. But before 9/11, like, because things shifted after 9/11, but before that, the whole Soviet thing was like the biggest, kind of threat to America, like the Soviets and Russia and stuff like that. So I feel like, yeah, they probably took him somewhere, tortured him, and maybe tried to get information about his boss and stuff like that. Probably that's probably the extent of what happened, maybe. Um, but yeah, we don't have to spend too much time on that.
Well,
So,
well,
but
I just was going to say that that makes sense to me.
yeah,
I would like to give a shout out to JB, because he always leaves very detailed comments, and he always has a bit of some inside information. So maybe he can tell us, as well as the other people that are commenting, what happened, because he probably knows or has a better idea as to what actually happened in that scene. After that. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, I do agree that's a loose end. They probably could have at least give a little bit more detail as to what happened next. But I understand. I guess they wanted to really focus on Franklin's downfall. Um, so it is what it
yeah.
is.
Definitely. I do like how Ruben was kind of trying to plead with him though when he was like giving when he was getting him in the car and stuff, because like in the last episode he was like, he was talking about, oh, I got recordings of Franklin and all this stuff,
Yep.
and now he's like pleading Franklin for his life. So
That's that,
yeah, that's what.
and stuff like that is very funny, because it shows the shift in power. We saw, I believe it was episode 8 of this season, when Teddy had captured Franklin, and then I was telling to you, I was laughing about when he has Franklin tied up, hanging from that, hanging, and then Franklin says, "Sorry about your pops, man." I laugh when I heard that. Obviously, Nelson Idris is a good actor, but I laugh because of how he said that. And then right at the end, when Gustavo saves him, the tables turn, and then in the next episode, he just goes scorched earth against Teddy. So I like how they show the shift in power dynamics when somebody has the upper hand. That
Yeah,
was really good.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, so one thing that you brought up actually before we started recording was Franklin's plane, because he does have his own plane. He's a pilot. He can fly. So I guess the question was why he didn't try to get away. So what did you think of that?
Well, this is a very, very valid complaint, I would say, because I kind of feel like, again, this goes to him having all this pride. There really was no reason for him to stay behind after all this stuff happened. When you saw that you wasn't going to be able to get the money and all this other stuff, he already had some money that Veronique stashed away that we saw earlier this season. Why could they not have boarded that plane and then went and started a new life somewhere else? That would have been the simple solution to all of this. But no, because he wanted the plan to work on his own terms, he was going to get his money back one way or another, because he was obsessed. That was what killed all of this. But they definitely should have explained what happened to that plane. Obviously, as a viewer earlier in the season, you saw that Veronique took a trip with her mom, and they were on that plane. They were on a plane. So that's why I was asking the question was it would have been great. And again, all they needed to do was just have a sentence when Franklin is talking to his mom at the jail cell before he goes off yelling at her. He could have told her, "Yeah, she took my plane and she took the money." That's all they needed to say. That she took the plane and she took the money, but they emphasized she took the money because that's all Franklin cared about, right? But to me, that was a missed opportunity because he probably could have sold that plane if he needed to get money. That's why I said that feels like that was a loose end that wasn't resolved. Um, One other thing I also want to say about Veronique, since we're on this topic as well, is that, like I mentioned earlier, Inga71 says she's never trusted the character, and I understand why. I personally feel, this is just my opinion, this betrayal would have meant a lot more if Veronique was a character that we saw from the very beginning of this show. Somebody who was in Franklin's corner from the very start, when he was just getting started out, and she was the true ride or die to the very end. Then in the end, when she made the turn, it would have meant a lot more because we've seen this character and we know that she has always been in Franklin's corner, much like his mom has. But the thing is that throughout every season of Snowfall, Franklin has been in relationships where the women always turn their back on him. So that's why you knew and you were waiting for it to happen with this character. And that right there is a fault because they could have corrected that if it was somebody who he was with at the very beginning. Now, again, I know a lot of people don't like the Melody character, but if he was actually in a relationship with Melody from the very beginning of this show to now, and maybe it was a situation whereas obviously he would still kill her father, Andre. But if it was something where she didn't know about any of this stuff and she didn't find out about it until the very end, I mean, that probably could have made this a much better thing for him for it to make sense why she would leave. But I kind of feel like because this character came in and there were a lot of questions people had when they saw Veronique the minute she was introduced. Who is this character and why should we trust her? What is her agenda? Everybody was saying that. So that's why when it happened in this episode, I wasn't surprised. Like you said, the minute he put his hands on her, around her neck, that was it, game over. But I kind of feel like they could have done this a lot better if this was somebody who was in his corner from day one, because it would really highlight how important she was to him and vice versa, and really show you how much of a deep end he has gone off where even his own woman has to leave him. That would have made more sense. But again, I guess they had to change it up and try to give you hope. But I kind of feel like it would have meant a lot more though if this character was there from the beginning. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with that because when Veronique actually came into the story, a lot of us were like, who is this chick? Like, we just we didn't have that attachment to the character, and
Yep.
they had to build that. And I think they didn't have enough time to kind of build that attachment to the character and really flesh out the character. I think they really only started fleshing her out this season with her mother and stuff being there.
Mhm.
So yeah, I agree, like it didn't hit like it should have, just because we weren't that drawn to the character anyway, and I think a lot of us were waiting for her to kind of turn on him at some point. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And like, oh no,
Yeah.
go ahead. Go ahead. I have a
No,
comment
no.
after you.
What was you gonna say? Well,
Oh,
you're
no,
probably gonna say what I was gonna say. But
yeah,
go
I was
ahead.
gonna say like in season four when Franklin had the cane, it's like you
Yeah.
had this other character they introduced, the other girlfriend, who really was basically helping out Man Boy. So
Oh yeah, T.
that T that could have been an opportunity where you introduced Veronique at that point at the very beginning. But again, they had a plan for this other woman that was going to be messing around with Man Boy and have some type of agreement with Man Boy. So I understand why they did that, but it just feels like because again, we already acknowledged earlier that obviously John Singleton, he was gone after season three. He was gone. All right, he was gone right before season three started. So they had to figure out how to complete the storyline from season four to six. I kind of feel like at that point I would have introduced Veronique in season four, so then we at least had a couple of seasons with the character to really get a feel for what her motivations are, how loyal she is to Franklin, so on and so forth. But with that short window of time and seeing what happened to him in season 4 with T, it's like, come on now. I think it's a no brainer. People are going to be like, no, this you cannot trust this woman. So I understand people that question her, like Inga 71. So I
Yeah.
get it. I totally get it. And it's definitely warranted.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that they couldn't do this because of how the story was and stuff, but had it been Melody, like had it been, the same girl that was there at the beginning, and like they're together now and stuff and they're having a baby or whatever, had it been her that this happened with, like that would have hit in a different way, like that would
Oh
have
yeah.
been, but of course it's a bit more complex than that because we know Franklin killed Melody's father and stuff like so,
Yep.
there's other layers to that. And yeah, the that kind of was that season 4 when that kind of when the character left the show essentially, I think. Was that the end?
She did show up at the end of season 4 when Franklin
Yeah.
visited her in Texas.
Right,
Um,
yeah. That
so
that was
so
the
that was
last
that was
time
the
we
last
saw her.
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the last time we saw that.
Yeah. So, but yeah. And I was actually expecting to maybe see her in this episode, Melody, just as a callback. I think that would have been cool to see. I know she kind of moved to a different state and everything, but it would have been a cool nod, like if she showed up and saw him, like the state that he was in as alcoholic, like, and she's got her life together. Like I feel like that would have been a good thing
Oh
because
yeah, yeah,
it's the guy that killed her father and now he's struggling and
yeah, yeah. I do agree that it would have been cool to see that so that she can see that he caused his own destruction.
yeah.
So she didn't have to worry about trying to take him out. As I mentioned last week, I did not want to see her come back and kill him. So but yeah, it would have been good for her to witness and see what happened to him as a result. I do agree.
Yeah. So before I get to my other question, do you have any other loose ends that you kind of wanted to touch on? Like anything that you thought
Um,
was a loose end?
I think, well, obviously with Gustavo, it feels like they have something else that they could potentially have. I think it really depends on if the spinoff is happening. Again, like I said, the showrunner did say in that interview, nothing is greenlit. This was an early idea that got leaked out somewhere, and at that point, they had only presented the idea, but they didn't really get approval to do it yet. So I'm curious to know what happens with that. But Gustavo, I think it's to be a compelling story of him trying to get to see his family in North Carolina. But it makes me wonder if Gustavo is still safe wherever he goes. I would imagine the DEA still, because that guy Tony Morano is still around. I mean, I'm pretty sure he would try to find him again. So I don't know how that will work out. But I mean, I was happy with that ending. Trying to think of any other loose ends. I can't think of any other ones off the top of my head at this moment. Um, yeah, we'll continue to talk, and if I think of something, I'll mention it. But I can't think of any other ones right off the top of my head right now that were loose ends.
Yeah. I think Gustavo's like ending was perfect, I think. Like his
Yeah.
scene was kind of perfect and it gave us enough of what we needed, he's doing something he's passionate about, training the kids. He actually trained Rey Mysterio, it looks like, he's training Rey Mysterio right now. So and yeah, he got the phone call. Well, he checked the message on, that thing he set up and he heard, his lady left a message and she said they're safe and everything and she actually said that she wants to see him, so
Mhm.
that was a nice little happy moment for him. If they do a spin-off, it would be good to see more of his story, but I guess we'll see if that happens. But I feel like that was perfect for his send-off. um and I guess the only other, like, I mean, I think with characters like Scully, we kind of got closure already, for these
Mhm.
characters. and Dion. I mean, he wasn't. He was like such a minor character anyway. I think so. We didn't really need to see what happened to him, I guess. But yeah, we kind of got a little bit of closure for those characters at the funeral, I think. So
Yeah, yeah, with
maybe,
Scully making up with Leon and Dion saying, yeah, just make sure y'all. He asked me if y'all got the person that killed Jerome.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I didn't have any problems with that. So I'm cool with how their stories lines ended. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't have any problems with that.
Yeah. So yeah, if you guys have any more loose ends, definitely let us know in the comments. But so the only other thing to ask is, what do you think is next for Leon and Wanda, and what do you think about their ending in this whole thing? Um, do you like would you have liked to seen anything else out of their story based on what we heard? Because Leon was talking about how marriage is difficult and things like that, and we know that Wanda was she wanted to go to Ghana, but instead she stays in Los Angeles, and she's trying to be a music artist or whatever. So
Well, she did.
what do you think? Go ahead.
Well, she did go back to Ghana for a period of time, and then that was when
Right.
Sissy said they told Leon to go to his wife. The only critique I have about that is that, I mean, what kind of husband is Leon to just send, she Wanda tells you, I want to go back to Ghana, and then you give her money to go back. Leon should just left with her at that point. He didn't need to have the conversation with Sissy, but I know why they did that, because like you said, they wanted to show you the parallel of, it's kind of like this was Sissy's son, the way they had that conversation. That's the only reason why, because there really was no reason for Leon to still be there after all this stuff happened. Like I said earlier, they don't have a plug anymore. uh, Jerome is gone, Teddy is gone. So at this point, why the hell are you still staying in Los Angeles trying to take care of the community? I kind of feel like at that point he should have known, you know what, I'm going to go back to Ghana now. And the other thing is, when Franklin came to him at the beginning of the episode, I remember Leon told him, I got 3 million. Franklin wanted all of that money. He didn't want a little bit. He wanted, no, I need all that. I need all that money. All that money. So that's why I said, because and this is why I said they were very creative with how they told the story. Because after that interaction between those two characters, I thought he was going to try to kill Leon later in the episode. That's what I felt like. So that made me concerned for what was going to happen to Leon moving forward. And obviously, we saw what happened. But that's why I said I'm glad they did it this way, because Franklin caused his own downfall. But to answer the question, I don't really know what's going to happen with the spinoff. I will say that I know that Leon, okay, Gail Bean had done an interview not too long ago with the actor that also plays Leon, and they had talked about, initially she was supposed to be killed off the show a long time ago, but that did not happen because they saw the chemistry that she had with Leon, and they built off that chemistry. So essentially, I kind of feel like they felt renewed. They see that there were a lot of fans that respond to those two characters. That's why they want to have the spinoff show. And as you saw in that interview, the showrunner said, it was really about Wanda finding a passion. So if her story ends at this point and they don't have a spinoff, he's okay with that, because they're saying that she found a passion and she doesn't have to go back on drugs. But the thing about the spinoff is that if they're going to go into this whole thing of, she does get into music, into being into the music industry, she's once again going to be felt with the pressures of all the types of stuff that comes when you're in an industry like that, whether it's the drug use, the stress, all that other stuff, the pressure. So this is going to be something that she can still have fall right back into that lifestyle. That's why I say it's an interesting decision, interesting path to go down, but it makes sense because South Central Los Angeles, they want to be true to the culture and talk about how hip hop music grew within that time period. So I understand them wanting to do that. But all I'm saying is that if they do that spinoff, she's definitely going to still be tempted, because she's going to be in these situations where you're going to maybe feel like you need to get a drink or you need to do something to stay a part of the crowd. And that's why I said maybe that could be what Leon has alluded to when he says marriage is difficult. Because again, if she has success, they may have to go their separate ways. She may have to do a lot of traveling to go to all these different places. So there's a lot of things they can take from if they were to have this show. Um, but it does beg the question of what is the long-term plan that Leon has. Obviously, he made mention about donating money to the community still. So I don't think he needs to run the projects anymore. At least from what I'm saying, he doesn't need to do any of that stuff. Um, and to be honest with you, you made the comment earlier about being, we were pretty satisfied with Dion. Maybe they should have had a scene of him having a conversation with Dion and letting Dion take over, because clearly Leon left to go back to Ghana. They could have definitely had a scene where he decided to give control back to Dion or somebody else, because there was someone else that could have took that over, but we never knew who that other person was. So they definitely could have explained that a little bit better. But overall, the stuff I mentioned, I'm sure that's what I'm thinking they're going to focus on if they have a spinoff. They did mention there will be other main characters they'll focus on also. So it's not just about Wanda and Leon in this case. It could be other characters, new people that they introduce. But I don't really know yet how they're going to tie that all together. And and I'll be honest, I'll say right now, I don't want this to be a show where it's only about music. It has to be other stuff happening in the 90s besides just the music. So I'll be very curious to see how they approach that. But that's all I can think of now as far as them doing a spinoff show. And I'm pretty sure we may see Sissy again, because Sissy did have a relationship with Wanda. So maybe she goes to visit her and talks to her about some stuff that she's doing for motivation. That's a possibility too.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good idea. Because so what I thought was going to happen, I thought maybe they would kind of inherit the shelter and kind of run that, and like
Mm.
maybe the spin-off ends up being the adventures of the shelter, just showing like different things that happen in the community and how Wanda and Leon help them and stuff like that. I thought maybe they would do something like that or go in that direction, but this seems interesting though. Like, if it ends up being about Wanda and her music career, there is some interesting things that can happen with that, because the music industry in itself is interesting. Like seeing and hearing about the things that happen behind the scenes. So
Mm-hmm.
like it doesn't have to be entirely focused on the music itself. It could just be about like the messed up stuff that happens behind the scenes. And like you said, there's gonna be many vices that she might fall. Well, I don't think she'll fall, but she might be tempted by different vices, like because drugs are a big thing in the music industry or in entertainment industry. Period.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be that kind of temptation there for her. And then Leon, I don't know what he's gonna do next. I guess he's kind of helping people in the community, but he's gonna be having to support his wife. I guess he's gonna be having to support her career and everything. And what they could do is show how being an entertainer puts a strain on relationships oftentimes, because it is that is something that happens where if one person is trying to be successful in an industry, like in the entertainment industry, whether it's music or acting or whatever, that does put a lot of stress on a marriage or a relationship. So they could show stuff like that in the show. But really what I hope the show ends up being is, like you said, like I hope there is no definitive main character, and it's just showing you the stories of a different set of characters that exist in us in whether it's all set in Los Angeles or I don't know if some characters might be outside, but I would love to see just a mix of characters, just seeing how their lives all kind of like showing the differences and also the similarities in their lives and stuff, and how everything affects one another, kind of like The Wire, where it's like it shows how the police life affects the street life, and how the dock workers affect the streets, and it shows
Mm-hmm.
all these different connections of how people's lives affect each other. So something like that would be good, where they show multiple characters. With Leon and Wanda could be the most prominent ones, but they could maybe also show Gustavo or something,
Yep.
or
And
Louie. Go ahead.
and I was going to say I agree 100% because that's essentially the template they had for this show, where they focused on Teddy, Gustavo, and Franklin. So they definitely can do that. The one comment that I do want to make, though, because I saw people making this comment online, is that, well, maybe the spinoff is going to be about Franklin recovering. I want to let everybody know, right? I just want to let everybody know right now. Damson Idris put out a tweet last night saying goodbye, Franklin, and he had a picture of how Franklin looks right now in 1990. I think it's safe to say he's saying goodbye to the character because he's going to get a lot of opportunities. So I'm going to tell people right now, I would not expect to see him on the show. If for any reason he is on that show, it's going to be something like a one-off appearance or something like that. But I don't think that they need to, because again, one thing that was very clear in that interview that we saw is that the showrunner said when he did not want to talk about the spinoff in this show. He wanted to focus on Snowfall and Franklin's story specifically. That's why the only exception he made was the line about Wanda wants to pursue music as a career. That was it. But he did not want to put anything in this show about the spinoff. He wanted to focus on Snowfall to honor the legacy of John Singleton and all the people working on this show. So that's why I said I'm totally fine if the spinoff doesn't happen. But at the same time, I think these people have proven that they are very talented at what they do. So I don't mind seeing them take other stories and create an entirely different show because I know that they would do a very good job at that. No doubt about it.
Yeah, yeah. Like one thing people have to understand is like Damson Idris, he is a rising star now. Like this guy is gonna get a lot of opportunities. There's even a rumor of where he's going next. Like and the MCU. Let me just say that. So um, yeah, like this guy is he's set for big things. And the thing is with actors, they don't want to stay tied to one project. Like his story has ended in this show now. Like, and he like Damson Idris wants to move on and do other things and get better and show the world his talent, because he's a talented individual. And that's, we've seen it these past 6 seasons. So now he needs a bigger platform. And, that bigger platform is movies, of course. So he's going to try to shoot to the top of Hollywood now. Like, I think that's where he's going. So he's not going to be in the spinoff. Like, I don't see it happening at all. Not even a cameo. Like he is gonna move on now. So people have to understand that, you know. Um, but yeah, I'm excited to see what might come next though. Like, if we do get a spin-off, I'll be following the story closely, like to see what they're gonna do and stuff like that. So yeah, look out. We might even do some extra content, basically if there's any news we might discuss it or something. We'll see what happens.
Mhm.
But I guess the last thing to kind of before we talk about the trailer, the last thing we need to do is I'm joking by the way. It was a trailer. But the last thing we need to do, you already spoke about it, Rich. John Singleton, there was a little tribute there to him, whereas Franklin and Leon were walking out the alleyway, and there was a film crew there, and they said, I think they're shooting a movie here. And then, Franklin says something along the lines of, oh, you guys ain't gonna win no Oscar, you know. So, but clearly that is paying homage to John Singleton, and it looks like they might have been filming Boys in the Hood. So I am happy that they included that in there. That was cool to see because we know that Boys in the Hood was one of the most monumental like movies like in this genre, and that was John Singleton's production. So that, you know, that was great to see that they added that. It's just a little nod to John Singleton because he is the reason that we have Snowfall. So
Mhm.
um, yeah, so and I guess, you know, to kind of close this out is we just gotta say, you know, thank you to John Singleton for
Yeah.
creating such an excellent show because he's, you know, he's done a lot of great work in Hollywood over, you know, the many decades that he's been working and everything. But, you know, this was a significant um TV show for our community, you know, that he kind of kicked off. So, you know, we have to give him his thanks and, you know, give him his flowers, of course. And yeah, rest in peace to him. And thank you for giving us this, you know, this masterpiece of a show. So yeah, Rich, anything to add to that?
Yes, I also want to say rest in peace to John Singleton. Um, I think he will be proud of what everybody brought to the table. I'm so happy. I'm glad that FX gave them the opportunity to continue the story because when he passed, I kind of wondered what was going to happen with the show. If the show was going to continue, or if it was going to just be, stop altogether. So I understand there are some people that will criticize some of the writing, throughout the final like season 4, 5, and 6. I totally get it because you may think certain things are going to happen or you want certain things to happen, but you have to understand that at least from what we know is that John Singleton had conversations with this team, just general discussions about where they wanted to see some of the characters go. So even though he wasn't physically here to be a part of season 4 to 6, I'm pretty sure he helped to give some idea as to things they can consider about how to handle Franklin as a character, how to handle Louie as a character. And again, the performances and the material. And we also have to mention Dub C, because Dub C, there have been a lot of interviews where he was the one that was basically acting as a producer, working with the actors to make sure that they sounded right and it was authentic to the source material. All of this should tell you how they tried to honor his legacy, even though he wasn't there. That's why I said they did a fantastic job. Like I said, some people will not like certain things on the show from a writing standpoint. I get that, but from the acting standpoint, I don't have any criticisms with any of the acting on the show. I don't have any criticisms with the cinematography on the show. And again, they did as much as they can to make every episode feel like this was a movie you were watching. So I have to give them credit on that because they did a fantastic job. And yes, he will be proud. I believe he will be proud. So rest in peace to him. And I look forward to seeing what everybody else works on next.
Definitely, definitely. A lot of big careers were made from this show. So yeah, that's the magic of it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Any final thoughts, Rich, at all? You know, anything, any final words? Since we probably won't be doing another Snowfall Aftermath for a long time. So
Yeah, for a while.
yeah,
Uh, Let me start by saying it has been an absolute pleasure covering the show with you, Gary. Obviously, we're going to still continue to cover Power and other shows, but let me just take a moment to thank anyone that has took the time to listen to this podcast. Whether you watched the video for the first time or you've been rocking with us for the longest time, we appreciate the continued support. I understand it takes time because this is long form content that we're talking about stuff. So we really do appreciate your time. And likewise, I hope that you do appreciate that. As Gary has mentioned before, we do have a lot of other things going on in our life that we're pretty busy with. So if we're taking time out to cover this show, that should let you know how important the show is to us as well. But more than important than anything else, I just love when people interact. And it's love. I love that we were able to build a community with this show, with Power. And like I said, we appreciate each and every one of you that leaves comments, whether you like the show or you don't like the show. I just like hearing your thoughts on the show in general because it's always great conversations to be had. So I would encourage you to continue to show your support, leaving comments, letting us know what you think about these shows. Uh, like the videos if you like, and consider subscribing if you're not subscribed either. And we look forward to continue to bring you great content in the future. But until then, we definitely want to thank you for the support, for taking the time to listen to us talk about these shows, because we enjoy having these conversations. We enjoy it even more when y'all are part of the conversation. So thank you for the support for sure. And we look forward to bringing you more soon.
Oh yeah, indeed, indeed. Couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, very like I'm very thankful to the people, for listening and supporting the show. Always, because we didn't know if people were even going to listen to this when we decided to start, doing Snowfall Aftermath. It's just we like me and Rich loved the show so much. We just thought, hey, why not do a recap show for this as well? Because we were already talking about the show anyway, among each other. So we were like, we should do a show. We should do a recap. So we did it, and we didn't know people were going to listen, and people actually did listen. So and I'm very grateful that there are people who actually come here every week and care what we have to say and enjoy listening to our discussions, and also throwing in their own thoughts, into the comments and everything. So yeah, thank you to you all. Like, your support means a whole lot. And yeah, it's just wow. I'm just I'm moved by the fact that so many people, have something to say about, the what we put out and everything. So thank you to you all. I can't wait to see, all your comments. I'm definitely gonna, like, this week I'm responding to every comment, like, on this episode, because this episode means so much. So yeah, looking forward to the comments and seeing what people think. So thank you, and we will see you another time. Like I said, if there's any like major news about Snowfall, we might do like a one-off discussion or something, just talking about it. But no promises, on that. It just depends on scheduling and all that stuff. But you can also check out the Powercast if you are a fan of Power, and there will be other reviews and recaps, things on this channel. So just look at take a make sure you subscribe to the channel, and just look out for the content that we put out. But we'll see you guys for now, and take care of yourselves and stay healthy. Peace out.
Peace.